Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack a truly fascinating, highly fragmented, and honestly wonderfully chaotic poetic text titled Mourning, SunRise, Twilight. Now, this piece, it's basically a labyrinth of raw emotion, really unconventional formatting, and some deep, deep existential questioning. It is definitely not your typical read. But by breaking down the themes today, we're going to uncover the profound architecture of a mind that's actively wrestling with itself, especially when it comes to the jarring reality of morning light and just the daily struggle to exist.
So here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to start by exploring the stream of consciousness style, then move into waking up to morning, followed by a look at the core existential struggle, and finally, we'll wrap up with art as survival.
All right, Section 1, the stream of consciousness. Before we can truly grasp what this text means, we kind of have to talk about how we need to read it. The author relies on a very specific literary style to pull us straight into their psychological space, and that is the stream of consciousness. Essentially, this is a style where a character's thoughts, feelings, and reactions are depicted in this continuous, rushing flow. It's totally uninterrupted by standard descriptions or conventional dialogue. Think of it like that raw, unfiltered journaling we've all done at some point, when the sheer weight of modern life just feels like way too much and you aren't worried about punctuation or perfect grammar. You're literally just trying to get the static out of your head and onto the page. That's exactly the energy we're dealing with here.
So how does the author actually pull this off mechanically? Well, we see heavily fragmented lines, sudden, almost dizzying shifts in thought, and this repetitive phrasing that almost acts like a verbal stutter. There's highly unconventional spacing and even intentional typos. For instance, the author literally breaks words right in the middle of a syllable, like writing improve am on one line and ends on the very next. It is a brilliant visual representation of a thought process that is just glitching and stuttering in real time.
And that brings us to a super revealing line early on in the text. I wrote when I woke up. I wrote before dreams. The author is capturing that exact liminal space. You know that hazy twilight zone right between waking up and falling asleep? That is the exact time when our psychological defenses are completely down. The logic of the waking world hasn't quite booted up yet, leaving absolutely nothing but unfiltered, raw emotion.
Moving right along to Section 2, waking up to morning.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the clever wordplay happening right in the title itself. We really have to pay attention to how the author spells that word. Throughout the text, you see two completely different worlds pitted against each other. On one side, you've got the literal morning with an O. The author describes the actual sunlight, birds chatting and eating worms, the yellow air, and these vibrant lime sunbursts. But then, on the internal side, we have morning spelled with a U. This is represented by gray rain, smeared gray skies, bitter waking, heavy grief, and shadowy rooms. The visual and thematic contrast is just staggering. You've got this vibrant, almost aggressive external world violently colliding with the narrator's internal emotional bleakness.
You get these two completely colliding realities. On one hand, you literally have sunlight says, hello. It's bright, it's cheerful, it's demanding your attention, but the immediate internal response? Guilty morning moods and waking up bitter. It is such a profound disconnect. The author's abstract dread of that morning light perfectly captures a really universal, highly relatable feeling of burnout. When you're just emotionally exhausted, the sheer optimism of a sunny new day doesn't feel welcoming at all. Honestly, it feels like an insurmountable demand.
Which brings us to Section 3, the existential struggle. Because, as you might guess, that intense morning dread doesn't just vanish with a cup of coffee. It boils over into a full-blown existential struggle, and the text gets much darker here. The raw, escalating anxiety hits you right in the chest with questions like, why am I even here, alive? The narrator spirals remarkably fast. One second they are just observing the morning sun or listening to the birds, and the very next they are questioning the entire foundation of their existence. It's a really jarring escalation, but it's entirely authentic to that stream of consciousness experience.
And it gets incredibly visceral. The author links this deeply philosophical crisis directly to the volatile chemistry of the brain itself, saying, these dopamine crashes are electrifying, relentless. That is such a fascinating way to describe a modern psychological struggle. It is not just a sad mood, right? It's a physiological crash, an electrifying emptiness that feels completely impossible to escape.
So the absolutely crucial point here is how the author expresses the sheer weight of feeling this disconnected from the world. The language turns violently jagged, slitting my fucking throat to skittle into an abyss.
While it's obviously shocking to read, as an academic metaphor, it just perfectly illustrates the absolute depths of the narrator's despair. They aren't just feeling a little down, they are desperate to plummet into the void, entirely out of step with that bright, cheerful morning happening right outside their window.
Further adding to this sense of total dislocation, the author actually incorporates these mysterious broken image icons right in the middle of the text. They pop up just after the narrator talks about looking in the mirror, seeing a rigid reflection spewed back at them, and waking up completely bitter.
And it totally makes you wonder, is this missing image just some random PDF formatting glitch? Or is it a deliberate reflection of the author's own feeling of being invisible? Because earlier in the piece, the narrator explicitly tells us, "I feel invisible at times." In a stream of consciousness poem like this, even a formatting error or an intentionally broken graphic can serve as a really profound metaphor for feeling erased, alienated, or just totally disconnected from your own identity. Finally, we reach Section 4, Art as Survival. And this brilliantly illustrates a shift in the narrative. Because the author doesn't just wallow in the abyss, they actively, almost desperately search for a mechanism to survive it. By mapping it out, we can actually anchor the chaos of the poem into a highly structured process of survival. Step 1, waking up bitter to the demanding morning sun. Step 2, isolating from the world, completely rejecting the noise outside. Step 3, relentlessly creating art in the shadows. And Step 4, finally finding a sense of temporary relief, a brief moment of contentment. During this self-imposed isolation, the author actually leans on some very specific things for comfort. They fully embrace the quiet of the night and what they refer to as an ongoing monk mode. But importantly, they also find companionship in their pet cat, Riku. The text notes how Riku brings a much-needed singing reprieve to the shadowy, difficult rooms the narrator is inhabiting. It acts as this small, grounding anchor of love and reality amidst all those crashing dopamine levels and existential dread.
What emerges from this isolated creation is this incredible, powerful sense of defiance. Just listen to this quote. "I'm happy with what I do, with what I create. Fuck with how I create. Yeah, with who I am." The author is reclaiming their power and their identity entirely through their creative output. The world outside might be completely overwhelming, the morning light might feel like a literal assault, but right there on the page, the author is the absolute master of their domain.
And that leads us to the ultimate synthesis of the whole piece. The author has this realization, maybe I need to write to bear this. I'm so out of place, so I go off and isolate to create the proper space. The poetry itself isn't just a way to express the existential struggle, it is the vital survival tool used against it. When the external world just doesn't fit, the author literally writes a brand new space into existence where they can finally breathe.
So we're left with this really provocative question to think about. If the world doesn't offer a comfortable space for us, can we truly create one just by writing it down? Well, this explainer has shown us that for this specific author, the answer is a resounding, desperate yes. It's honestly an incredible testament to the power of unfiltered self-expression. I'd highly encourage you to think about your own coping mechanisms and how you go about carving out your own space when the morning light just feels a bit too bright. Thanks so much for diving into this with me today.